Welcome back to Security Cleared Jobs, Who's Hiring and How. Today's episode features a conversation from ClearedJobs.Net's Military Monday webinar series.
Hey everybody, welcome to Military Monday. I want to say hello and let you know that we're going to be talking to April Martinez. Her official title is the Associate Director of Resource Management with AT&T. So good morning or good afternoon, April.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking about clearances. We're going to really focus a lot on the polygraph clearance. We're going to talk about how veterans can learn about their clearance, know their clearance, what they can do with their clearance, that kind of stuff. A lot of questions that people have when they're coming out of the military. We're happy to have you here. You've been a great friend of ClearedJobs.Net. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us, what it is that you do at AT&T, and then we'll learn a little bit about, kind of how you got where you're at.
I do all of the hiring and the strategy for bringing in new talent to AT&T, whether it's direct hire, so new AT&T employees, or coming through some of our favorite vendors that we like to do business with. So I get to spend time with everybody from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, well, that's great. We see you at some of our job fairs. You've done some podcasts with us. But when it comes to you, and the reason that you're here on Military Monday, because we're talking about veterans, you're a veteran yourself.
I am. I was in the Army a long time ago.
And when we talk about your background, you were not in human resources. You were in Intel, right?
I was in Intel, Arabic linguist.
Yeah, which is not what you're doing now. So we're going to get into your story in a little bit. But
not even close.
So, April, let's first start off talking about clearances. I mean, everybody coming out of the military, I was a medic. I was a corpsman in the Navy. So I knew I had a clearance. I assumed it was probably secret, but it was never part of my daily, didn't really care. But I guess if you're like an Intel person or a linguist, that was a big thing in your world. So let's just first talk about the clearance levels and what it is. What's the average veteran coming out with?
So a lot of secret is what we see the majority of, and then you'll start to see some TS, SCI. It's really going to depend so much on the job that you're doing in the military. Mm-hmm. And then the highest level clearance that we typically see would be a TS, SCI with a CI poly. There's some full scope or lifestyle polys, but it's exceptionally rare. So, most of us, myself included, we came out with a CI.
And those polygraphs, that's the high level. I mean, really, TS, SCI begins to get to be the high level. When you're looking at a government contracting job, maybe you're going to see a little bit more financial pay for having those types of clearances when you're doing stuff, the TSSCI. But then the polygraph is what really jumps you up there.
It does. And it's also a very limiting factor. So you get more money with it, but it also changes where you can go and how you could get there.
But if you've got that polygraph, or if you're trying to apply for a job, it's one question we get all the time is that if it says polygraph required, should people still apply? Or, but you said it's a pretty limiting factor, right?
It is. So in general, you'll see something that says polygraph required, and they'll be specific, right? And whether it's a secret clearance, whether as a minimum, right? You always want to know what is the lowest level clearance that is needed for that particular job. And so it'll always be listed on there. So it could be secret. It could be TS, SCI, and it'll say on there TS, SCI. Mm-hmm. It will also say TS, SCI with polygraph. And depending on who you talk to, what agency, the polygraph may not be spelled out, right? So it may just say polygraph, and it won't say specifically CI or lifestyle or full scope, because there are some security concerns as far as what you can share, on a public website.
We deal with different companies, and I see different policies from different organizations about what they list, what they don't list, what they say to list. We've even seen people get into, what they should put on their LinkedIn profile. Should they say they've got a polygraph and that kind of stuff.
Right. And it depends so much on the agency that's sponsoring you and the agency that you're working with. So a lot of variance.
I think one of the things about those types of things too is, as a veteran, you might get more than one piece of advice. You could actually get conflicting advice, couldn't you?
Yes, very much so.
So let's talk about these polygraphs, though, because this is something that's one of the biggest mysteries, I think. And there's the CI, which is the counter intel, and the full scope polygraph. So first of all, just if you're a veteran coming out, what's the difference between the two? Why do those two even exist as a difference? Do you know?
Well, they will evaluate you on a different set of criteria, right? CI, counter intel, is exactly what it says, right? It's assessing your risk for a counter intel situation, right? Are you going to give secrets away? And it's really going to get into that, a lot of the technology side of things, sharing information, and et cetera. But the full scope or lifestyle covers that and then all kinds of things about yourself personally, like your personal life. And it can really get very detailed depending on who's giving it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a whole different dynamic. It's very easy to go through the CI and you're like, yes, of course, I'm never going to share secrets or anything like that because I'm a military person. I've, sworn an oath. I've done these things. When you get into the full scope, because it's more about you as the person and your personal life, it gets a little bit more difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because it's personal choices that you made. And some of us, when we were younger, did really dumb things.
I'm you know what, been there, done that, definitely. When it comes to these things, though, in the big picture, there's a lot more CI people than there are full scope people, just in the talent pool, right?
Correct.
And one of the reasons that we see that is because this is what we're going to talk about a bit today is the military tends to make more CI poly people and not very many full scope poly people.
Yes.
So if you're a veteran coming out and you have a polygraph and you're not sure which one, it's not 100%, but it's a pretty good bet. It's probably the CI.
It is about 9 times out of 10 is going to be a CI.
When we talk about this, it can be frustrating for a veteran, right? Because you could be working, you were telling me how you could be a CI poly person working next to a full scope poly government contractor, but then when you get out, you don't have that same clearance. What is that? Why is that? How does that even happen?
Sure. So the military has a waiver, right? So they have a waiver that would allow a person who's in the military performing a function next to a government person or next to a government contractor. And you could be sitting in line with each other, like in a knock or something like that. Same access is doing the same job, but everybody around you will be required to have a full scope poly, and the military person is only required to have a CI poly because they operate under a waiver process. That's what happened to me, right? When I got out, I was working with all these contractors and government people, and they all have full scope polys, but here I am, an Arabic linguist with a CI poly, right? And when I got out, I didn't really realize that, right? I was young and kind of dumb and didn't really know the nuances of that. So when I went to get a job as a government person or a contractor person, the poly was always an issue.
Yeah.
Right? Because I just had a CI poly. When you get it in the military, they don't tell you get this because it's a waiver.
Yeah. So do they do that just because it takes so long to get a full scope? Is it one of those things where like, we don't know how long you're going to be stationed here?
I don't know the actual logic or the policy behind it. It's been going on for so long. We might be doing it just because it's what we've always done.
Yeah.
I really honestly don't know why, but it's very common.
Yeah. But the big thing is it's a reality. And so if you're getting out and you think to yourself, oh, April's working here, she works for AT&T, so I can probably apply for that same job because we're working together. And you're talking to the recruiter and they say, do you have this full scope poly? Oh, probably, because if that's what it takes, I've been working there type thing. And then you turn out you don't have what you're looking for or what you thought you did.
That's right. It's very frustrating. It makes finding a job coming out of the military much more difficult.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's frustrating for you and your recruiting team too.
It is a little bit, but I mean, we're used to it, right? Because we're so used to seeing that in the workplace. We see it at job fairs, et cetera. So it is not a great thing for us, but it is more frustrating on the military person side, right? As an individual.
So speaking of being the military person getting out, you had mentioned a little bit about your first job when you came out of the Army. And it's a great story because you're telling me right now, we've already learned that you were an Arabic linguist, had a CI poly, and you couldn't get a full scope job. When you got out, you didn't get your first job didn't require clearance at all, right?
It did not. No, I went backwards and sideways probably. So I took a job as a cable installer, right? So I just did grunt work. I mean, no offense to the grunts out there. I love all of you, but I just took a very simple, very basic job just to get in a position where I could be processing for a full scope poly and, still pay my bills and feed the dogs and the cats and all those different kinds of things. So I went backwards and then sideways just to get, where I needed to go. Huge blessing to do that. I got so much more exposure to this part of the world, out of the military. You learn a lot going through something like that.
So when you took that job, did you know that it was going to end up progressing or was it just a guess? Did you just, did you take that job because you just needed to pay the bills or, how did that end up happening?
Sure. So a lot of contractors in our space will do stuff like that, right? So when I went to that job interview and we talked about it, part of the discussion was being put in for clearance or having my clearance upgraded is, what we would call it today. in my line of work. It was having your clearance upgraded. So you're going to go to work, you're going to do work with this company on a particular contract that doesn't require that. And in the meantime, you're going to be submitted for, in my case, a full scope poly or a clearance upgrade.
Yeah. And so you had that conversation then at the beginning with the recruiter, with the program manager?
Correct. It's usually done initially with the recruiter, right? Because they'll know if that contract will allow such a thing, right? The contract vehicle has to have the capability to upgrade a clearance. And the recruiter will generally know that information, right? And so you can have that discussion. You can ask that question, ask it, be very upfront about your situation, because that's going to make it easier on both sides to know like what is the best course of action.
So just when you started this process, then did you engage with the organization for the position that required the clearance and they said, no, look, we're gonna have to start you down lower because we really want you? Or did you proactively just, this is a position I want to just get a job, and you engage with that? And then during the discussion, they said, oh, you're really smart. You're going to be great. We need to put you over here. Like, which way did it start?
So when we had my conversation, and this is a long time ago, so let's say I was much younger and I was less educated about it than I am today, but it was really on them. They really helped me. They initiated the clearance upgrade conversation, right?
Wow.
So they really led me. Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, I would not be where I am today without them. But they really talked me through that, explained how that process would work, why it was something that I should consider doing, right? So they helped me get there. I really just needed to pay my bills.
Yeah, well, that's a great story, and it's great to hear that, because I think a lot of people, when they come out, they're not sure if they should bring it up. Also, they might be a little fearful of dealing with recruiters, because if the only recruiters you ever dealt with were the people that put you in the military, which maybe, and truth be told, my last gig in the Navy was recruiting. So I'm not bagging on recruiters.
I would say ask, right? It's a fair question. Recruiters expect the question to be asked because it shows that you understand your situation, you understand what's in front of you. It's no different than talking about your compensation or a company's benefits, any of those kind. It's all fair questions that, shows that you really understand what you're going into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and speaking of understanding, if you're going to ask those questions, it would behoove you to be prepared as a veteran. So a lot of people, you're going to want to know what your clearance is. And like I had mentioned before, there's some people who get out there not really sure what their clearance is because they've just had a job. So what's some ways that a veteran can go about doing this? What kind of information should they have, or what are they trying to get so they can be prepared for those conversations, do you think?
Right. That's a really good question. You want to find out when your last BI or your background investigation was completed, right? So you want to know if you're fairly current, right? Because you want to be in scope. That's going to help your transition go smoother. You want to know the date of your last polygraph, if you've had a polygraph. You also want to know what the outcome was. Most people just assume that if you're there, then you passed it, but it would depend on the agency, right? Some agencies allow you to have a pass or an inconclusive. So you want to know what you've got, because that's going to help you. Ideally, what you want, if you could get anything that you want to know that all of your poly and your background are current or in scope.
And is that 5 years or so?
5 years. Yeah, 5 to 7 years. Yeah, 5 to 7 years is considered reasonable for most people. But again, a lot of nuance because it depends who's sponsoring it, who's holding it, etc. So ask those questions. And if you're in the military, you can ask your security officer. They will be able to tell you, right? They can pull up your social. They can tell you what your status is and give you all of that information so that you are prepared when you go to speak to a recruiter. Don't put that information on your resume, but just have it so so you can talk about it intelligently.
And when you're talking about some of these higher end clearances, I mean, really, the more you know about your polygraph, the more the safe bet you are for that recruiter to really engage you, right?
Well, it helps them know what your process is going to be, and it will help everybody understand how long that might take, right? Depending on where you are, if you're in scope, if you're out of scope, is going to determine, sometimes the length of time that it would take for you to get your clearance crossed over or upgraded.
So you mentioned background investigation date. There's also something now called continuous vetting. Are those the same thing? Are they a little different or?
They're not the same thing. So they complement each other, right? So everyone is always going to have to do the background investigation, but the continuous vetting or continuous evaluation is what it's also called, are just automated checks and processes that will go on,
So even with
continuously.
yeah,
Yeah.
even with the continuous stuff, you should still have a date. There's still a date.
You
that's
should. You
associated
should.
with it.
And there, for continuing evaluation, you want to know your enrollment date. So you ask the question, know it. You're very unlikely to get the question from the recruiter about the enrollment date on the CE. But if you know it, then you're going to be, one step ahead of understanding what part of the process you're in.
Yeah, and these polygraph positions, they're so tough to fill for recruiters.
Yes.
AT&T and anybody else that's out there looking for those things. You make a little bit extra money because it's a tight talent pool.
Very tight.
So if you've got these clearances and you're coming out, I mean, you would be remiss if you didn't at least look at those opportunities, even if you think to yourself, oh, I don't want to do that stuff. I mean, you want to kind of jump at this and at least figure out what's going on pretty soon, right when you get out, right?
If I could do it over again, the advice that I would give with clearances and finding a job is to really start looking before you're ready to get out, right? Like don't wait until the last 4 weeks or the last, 6 weeks or whatever. You're going to want to start looking well in advance. Know the date that you're getting out, know your clearance stuff, start engaging with companies and start 6 months out. Some of the clearance crossover and upgrades are taking about a year to 18 months, right? So you have a long runway to find something that's going to be suitable for you, but it's really hard to do it in 3 weeks.
Yeah. So contingent offers are something that we spoke about when we were getting ready for this little broadcast. I mean, number one, contingent offers, you can get as many of those as you want to, right? You can collect them.
Yes, you can. It's like cards. You could collect them if you did Pokemon cards or something like that.
But if you've got a contingent offer, can they start to that process on a contingent offer for you?
Yes.
To like the crossover stuff?
Yes. So that's one thing that I didn't know when I got out. So you can, and I would encourage people to not walk away from contingent offers thinking that it's not real, it's imagined. So contingencies can be based on any number of things like a contract award, funding for a position, your clearance crossover, clearance upgrades. If you can find a good position that suits your needs, that is just contingent upon your clearance crossover or a clearance upgrade, there is no reason not to move forward with something like that, right? It's like having an ace in your back pocket if you don't have something, in front of you today. Because that contingent offer allows companies like AT&T and like so many others to actually start a clearance upgrade process, right? So it gets you moving. Now, one thing I would caution you is if you're going to do that, you need to keep track of who you have contingents with, right? Because, you could have multiple submissions into a specific agency or contract or something like that, and it can get really kind of hinky as far as doing the upgrade. So remember who you have it with, but there is no reason to say, well, I'm not going to consider a contingent because it's not real. Yeah. They're very real. They allow you to get moving in a process while you're working and getting paid.
Yeah, that's some great information. Quick little commercial here, but it's kind of a good commercial. We got some job fairs coming up. When we talk job fairs just in general, whether it's poly only job fairs or whether it's, all clearance events at the other places, people should be going there, not just when they first get out, but you said 6 months or something. Like what would you expect to see? Who could get something out of a job fair like this?
Anybody who has a polygraph with a clearance could find these valuable, right? A lot of us are there. We want to meet people. We're looking towards the future, right? We know, like you had said, it's a super tight labor market. And so we're always looking towards the future. What is coming at us? Who is the good talent coming out? And so if you have the opportunity as a military person to attend one of these fairs, I would encourage you, go to every table, go to every booth, talk to them, find out what they're looking for. What are they telling you about the timelines for your clearance? What is the work looking like? It's really going to hone your skills, right, as far as engaging with people and interviewing, after being in the military, you don't really interview, right? You just go
Yeah.
where they tell you to go, right? So now you have to be able to speak to, what you're doing, where you want to go, and you can hone your skills. You can really learn a lot about the industry. You can find a company that maybe is suitable to your values and is a good fit, and can help you with your clearance transition.
And I would think too that the sooner you go, you might end up getting questions that you don't have the answers to yet, but now you still have time to go back and get those answers.
Yes, you're not at the last minute, right? Waiting,
because
and trying to figure it out.
We talked about going to the 2 shop or something like that to get your clearance information. You think that's tough now to do? Imagine doing it 3 months out after you're out of the military.
Yeah.
No one's going to answer the phone for you.
No, it's very difficult. I mean, you can find some companies who might be really interested in you, who can make a call and, find out where you are on your behalf if you've already exited the military. But it's so much easier on the companies that you're going to engage with, if you come prepared with that information.
Yeah. And like we said, if you go there and you find out what you don't have, we call it gap analysis. You find out what you don't have, you can go back and fill in those gaps while you still have time. So if you're looking to find more, you can go to ClearedJobs.Net, hit the job fair tab. You can see the whole list of events. You can see the companies that are going to be there, and you can see the positions that they're looking to really talk to folks about. But that kind of covers everything we were going to go today. April, I really want to thank you so much. You brought so much to our conversation for veterans. Is there anything that we left out or anything else you want to say?
I would just encourage everybody, when you're talking to companies, ask good questions. We want to help you, right? Helping you find a good home, find a good job helps us in our own needs, right? So I would just say, ask your questions, be really open. Everyone is going to be nice and they'll be pleasant, and they'll help you narrow down maybe what you're looking for, some language in your resume. But anything that we can do to help you helps us. So just be willing to talk to everybody and ask any questions that you might have.
All righty. Well, everybody, we're going to let you go now. And just remember, if you have any other questions, you can find myself on LinkedIn, Bob Wheeler on LinkedIn. You can probably find April Martinez as well on LinkedIn. Hit us up, and we're always here to help. So thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.